Hello, this is Unexplained America, and I'm your host, Lisa. Thank you for joining me again this week. Now, this is part 2 of the Lindbergh baby kidnapping case, crime of the century. So if you haven't listened to part 1, stop, go back, listen to part 1. It's really fascinating. There's just a lot in this part 2. I will say listener discretion. Okay, there's going to be mention of course, the baby's body being found. It's brutal. It's a child. There is going to be mention of suicide. So just FYI, just listener discretion. Yes, it's just a lot. And this episode, there's just a lot to unload in this episode period. But a little business, please follow, subscribe, leave a comment, go find my business page. So I do have a business page set up for Unexplained America now on Facebook, but I am on all the social medias. So yes, definitely follow, leave a comment. Everything that you do helps, and I do appreciate. Where we left off in part 1, it was Tuesday, March 1st, 1932. Charles and Ann Lindbergh's 20-month-old baby, and he goes by Charlie, he is missing. And there is a ransom letter left, so they know that he's been kidnapped, but we're gonna get into all of that. And remember, in part 1, I kind of left you guys with a little nugget, little dangle, sorry, but something that I found super interesting and that I had never heard before, known before, maybe because I've not really studied this case or whatever, but I felt like this was a very big, I feel like, and I could be wrong and you guys might disagree, or someone that's a scholar on this case file might disagree, but I felt like it was a very big tell with this whole kidnapping situation. So I found an article. It was written May 22nd of 1929. So this was before Charles and Ann were even married. And in the article, it is talking about a man named Robert Tondera. Now, he had been arrested at Ann's family's estate in Maine. Okay, this is like their summer place. Now, evidently, this Robert, he stated he was an airplane mechanic and that he wanted to talk to Colonel Charles. And so anyway, he is arrested because this article explains that private detectives and Department of Justice agents were guarding the Morrow estate because Constance Morrow, which was Ann's sister, who was only 16 at the time, she had received a letter threatening her life. Now, this letter requested $50,000 being deposited at a designated point in Massachusetts, which was very near where she went to school. Now, this article, I thought this was just funny. This is just silly, but they called her, quote unquote, the bride's, like talking about Ann Morrow, the bride's to-be flapper sister. Flapper sister. Oh my. So this is quite interesting. So the $50,000, the fact that you think about all this and you think about the family, like you thought, to me, I thought, okay, this child was kidnapped because of the father, but really we have to look at the wealth. Like Anne's family's wealth is what was really attractive, and already there's kidnapping, threatening letters going on, and this is before Anne and Charles are even married. Okay, so even married, and this is Anne's family, and Anne's family are the ones that have the wealth. Obviously, Charles, he is wealthy too, but they are beyond wealthy. Okay, this is just food for thought for me because these two events, obviously, they correlate, but even more so, like just the fact that this was in the paper. And then the next day, like even after the kidnapping is reported, so by March 2nd, so after Charlie's taken and in the paper, like the newspapers themselves are bringing up that these things, and they're also mentioning that baby Charlie had received threatening notes in the past, like in the first year of his life. So threatening notes, prank calls, they were called crank letters in the newspaper, but these threatening notes and phone calls were happening to Anne's family. They were happening when the baby was just newly born. So there was just a lot, like, and when I think about it, I came from the 80s. So I guess you could just get away with this type of thing. Obviously, if you were trying to write people crank letters now or phone calls, I mean, in the 90s, we had push the button and call the people back, or we had caller ID. And now, I mean, you see a number pop up. And then, of course, just with all the technologies, I will say it's good. It's a good thing that people are struggling with cranking people. Like, people have a lot of video cameras now. You just have a lot of digital footprints on people because of their phones, or the people, ring doorbells, just a lot of good things. But back then, this was just really common. I guess it's just very common to send letters, send threatening phone calls, crank letters, crank calls to these ultra rich people or famous people, quote unquote, or any people, I guess. So anyway, I thought that was super interesting little side note. Let me know what you think on that. Back to the night at hand, because we left and we're, of course, kidnapping day 1 is the March 1st. March 1st, 1932. The baby's gone. The first to arrive at the scene, which is the house, was the Hopewell, New Jersey police. And there is a police officer, a Charles E. Williamson, and then his chief, which was a Harry Wolf, is with him. Now, he will tell the newspapers that when he arrives at the house, the Lindberghs are in their dining room. They have 3 servants with them, okay? So we know that Betty Gow was there. We had mentioned Betty Gow, she was the nurse for Charlie. Now, Ollie, and it's Watley, I believe, his wife is like the 3rd servant, quote unquote. She wasn't even listed. Most women at that time, especially in the newspapers, were listed as like Mrs. So-and-so, their husband's name. So it was just mentioned Mrs. Ollie Watley. Now, she was the cook. So the 3 of them, Charles Williamson will tell the newspaper that they were very composed, they were calm, but that he could tell Anne's composure was taking everything in her to remain composed. Like, he could tell that she was just about to come unglued. Like, she wasn't crying, but he was told that she cried as soon as he left, like, and that she had been crying. Like, they were beside themselves, okay? They're trying to be stoic. They're trying to help the police. They're trying to answer questions. She tells the officers about how baby Charlie has been battling a cold and that she was so worried about the cold weather. All the baby had on was this white nightgown, like it was like a little sleeper. And she did say that she had gone through all of her baby blankets in the house. They had counted them and none were missing. So all that she knew was that her baby had been sick and that he had been taken out into the cold. And we had talked about the weather being around 32 degrees or so that night. So it was a cold night. She's worried. The officer Williamson and Chief Wolf, they go outside with their flashlights, and kind of away from the house, they do find a ladder of sorts. It's kind of like a homemade type of ladder, which we will get into. So they find a ladder, they find a dowel pin, and I had to look this up. It is a cylindrical fastener used to align, join, or secure machine parts. So possibly this dowel pin was used in this ladder contraption, okay? And again, we'll get into the ladder. They find a chisel, and then they're asking Charles and Ollie, are any of these materials of the home already, like the estate? They're like, no, these are foreign to us. We don't know what they are. They were brought in. Now, they do find footprints, and then they actually find the prints where the ladder had been up against the house, kind of under the baby's window. Now, it sounded like really the ladder was more upwards of the baby's window, like beside the window, not necessarily right underneath it. Okay. Now, kind of back to the letter. So we had kind of discussed that in the bedroom itself. So when Charles went into the baby's room, he does find a note. Well, he never touched the note. Like, he sees the note, he never touched the note. He had told everyone in the house, do not touch the note. Like, he knew, Like, he knew enough, and at this time, fingerprints were a very big kind of source of forensic as far as any type of detective work. So they could pin things on people utilizing fingerprints. So he said, do not touch anything. Do not touch this note at all. Like, he told Anne, he told the servants, like, nobody touch it until the police arrive. Now, the Hopewell police, they still do not touch it. And then right as they're working, they arrive to the house first. So right after them, the New Jersey State Police arrive. Now, there is a trooper, Kelly, and he actually moves the envelope utilizing a pen. So he's also not touching the letter or anything. He moves it to the fireplace. So he's kind of putting it there to be like, no one touched this. And he's waiting on another like trained officer to come and go through this to preserve any type of fingerprint evidence. So nothing else is touched in the nursery either way, okay? So everything's just being held. Now, other than the envelope found in the nursery, they do find deposits of yellowish red clay matching mud outside the home. Now, that night, all these different agencies, you have the state police out. You don't have, like, the FBI is called right away, and we'll talk about this. Like, they are called as just an auxiliary unit. Now, the New Jersey State Police, they are really kind of quote unquote in charge of this, but there are local, state, federal officers. Charles knows everybody and everybody in the government. He knows the president. He knows and probably have met J. Edgar Hoover, who at that time was the head of the FBI. Like, he knows everybody. And everybody knows him, and everybody is finding out about this. And New Jersey, of course, is surrounded. I mean, of course, it's a small state geographically, of course, and it has New York right there, Pennsylvania. So this news is like traveling fast. On top of all of the law enforcement people, you have press. So the press, there are radios. That's how they hear about things. So the press had started to show up. And Charles will say that night there were hundreds of people on his property. Hundreds. I mean, it was total chaos. And at that time, there wasn't like a cartoning off of the crime scene. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to, no one can touch this, and this. I mean, the press were actually going all over the place. I mean, they were traipsing all over the property and looking at everything. So you had people just everywhere. Charles, and he is going around that night. I mean, he is a dad that doesn't know where his son is. And of course, goodness, poor Anne, she is being consoled. Her and Betty are beyond upset. But Charles is going around with the men, with flashlights. They are going all over the property. They are going to the neighbors. They are going everywhere. He is working with all of the law agents, and they are just looking all night. He is not sleeping. He is just looking. He is just doing. So again, all of this happened at 10 p.m. Okay, 10 p.m. on March 1st. Now, by the very next day, by the Wednesday, the huge, like, there's ads running. We're not talking front page news or one article. We're talking the whole newspaper is full of articles about the Lindbergh baby, okay? And they're all saying all kinds of different things. But the headline on one of the papers is Lindbergh baby safe, postcard says, search centers in Newark. So this was Newark, New Jersey. A postcard is literally found in the mail in Newark, New Jersey by 1:30 p.m. Now, it is addressed to Charles, and again, the postcard literally states, baby is safe, instructions later, act accordingly. And kind of in red and similar to the ransom note, okay? So it's looking exactly like the ransom note as far as the way it's written. And again, she is absolutely beside herself. I can't even imagine. And we talked about how she is pregnant. So she's pregnant. She won't actually have the baby until August. But yes, she is a pregnant young mother, absolutely devastated. Her 20-month-old child is taken. It's a cold night, wearing only its night sleeper, okay? And I will say that room, so it looks like when I looked at an outline of the house, and it looks like this room is beside the nurse's room, and then it's kind of off the parents' room. It's kind of all upstairs. I believe this room had like two windows. Both were unlocked, but one had a screen. Now the window that the kidnappers came into, that you could tell that they came into, that screen was warped. And so it was easily, moved out of the way. And that's how they access the baby's room, just FYI. In the newspaper, there is a plea, and this comes directly from Anne. And she states, so she's saying to the kidnapper of the Lindbergh baby, and the press is putting this in the paper for her, the baby has been sick, and its recovery may depend on the treatment it gets from you. You must be especially careful about the diet. This outlines the diet. And also, this is the fervent prayer of a grieving mother. 1 quart of milk during the day, 3 tablespoons of cooked cereal morning and night, 2 tablespoons of cooked vegetables once a day, 1 yolk of egg daily, 1 baked potato or rice once a day, 2 tablespoons of stewed fruit daily, half a cup of orange juice on waking, half a cup of prune juice after the afternoon nap, and 14 drops of a medicine called, and I'm going to butcher this, Biostarola during the day. Biostarella? I can hardly see this. This is a really old newspaper article. And then it says, follow her request, and you may in some part redeem yourself in the eyes of a contemptuous world. This is exactly what I would do as a mom. I can't even imagine like being in that situation, but she is so worried about her baby. And obviously, we kind of discussed, they follow kind of a strict order, like a very regimental situation with the baby. Like, he's not coddled, like they were just trying to do the best they could. And obviously that is a very loving breakdown of, this is what my baby needs. My baby's been sick. Please take care of my baby. Oh my goodness. So again, this is just heartbreaking. And the whole nation is reading this, and they're reading the newspapers. And of course, they're absolutely struck. They can't believe that this is even happening to the most famous baby, quote unquote, in the world, to the most famous parent. So it's just utterly horrific. Now, kind of in that same realm, the same time frame, we're talking day 2, there is also reports. So just kind of remember this. There are reports coming out that there is a woman accomplice. And the reason they think that is because there's a rumor that there were women footprints found at the scene. Okay, so just remember that. Now, because of that postcard found, and obviously this kidnap situation, there's correspondence. They're trying to, biggest thing on Charles' mind is, yes, I want to work with these kidnappers and get them exactly what they want. Like, we need to do this. This is the whole strategy. This is the whole point. So the police, they have this postcard. So of course they go to the postmaster, and he is able to tell them the type of card used, that there were only 2 people that actually had bought those type of postcards, and one was like a woman and one was a man. So they get the description of the man that bought this postcard, that they felt like did this postcard, and he says the man was about 40 years old. He was about 5'3". He was 140 to 150 pounds or so, and he wore a dark overcoat and a derby hat. So this was the description that was going out at like day 2 about this situation. On the other side, there are a lot of people coming forward to offer their help in talking with the kidnappers. I guess this is a thing. This kind of eludes me, but this looks like, based on other news articles and other kidnappings were kind of, I won't say common, but they were happening. And right away, the politicians are putting in the newspaper about how they're going to make kidnapping like a federal, like they're already talking about changing the law. Okay, right, day 2 as well. This man, this former mayor that is friends of the Morrow family. Like, he was a former mayor of Englewood, New Jersey. His name is Douglas Thompson. So he goes and everybody's talking to the press. So he tells the papers that he'll take charge of handling the payments in between, like the go-between between the kidnappers. So, and again, this is the next day. This is day 2. So everybody's offering to help. And I really think they're offering to help in a nice way, but everyone coming forward is being scrutinized, I will say, by the police, by the way. So remember that as well. Anne's mother drives in from Englewood to be with Anne. And I think we had already said, I'm not 1,000% sure in part 1 if we talked about it, but her father, Anne's father, had passed away in 31. Okay, so they are fresh off of her father's passing. But her mother, of course, this is her daughter and her grandchild, and if you can, I can't even imagine. So she goes to be with her baby girl who is pregnant and dealing with, this awful, horrendous nightmare of a situation. People are describing them, the newspapers all over them. They are describing that Charles, this next day, he hasn't slept. He's described as looking gray. He's solemn. He's wearing an old leather jacket, worn trousers, muddy boots. They're reporting on his mom. So his mother, of course, his father has passed. His mother is still teaching. So she is teaching. It's reported that she's going to continue to stay in Minnesota. She's going to continue to teach, and she wasn't going to leave the classroom. She was just waiting to hear more. So they're reporting on all the family members, okay? But that she wasn't necessarily going to take the trip right away, that she was just waiting to get word of any type of updates before she left. And like I mentioned, so the president at that time is Herbert Hoover, and then you have all of these politicians, and of course Charles is friends with all of these senators and congressmen and just all these people, and they are really in the newspapers discussing the changes in the law, because evidently at that time, kidnapping laws were there wasn't like a federal law in place about kidnapping at that time. So there were state laws. And in fact, the New Jersey state law was that if the offense was like 5 years to life, I guess it depends on. So there was a law within the state, but there wasn't a law making it a federal offense with the government. So right away, they're talking about changing the laws. And again, this is all day two going on in these same newspapers. So you have, so like I said, this isn't just an article. This is the whole paper is full of everything regarding the Lindbergh baby. Okay. So they're also discussing the Lindbergh's fortunes, and they are talking about how much they're worth. So they are reporting that Charles is reported to have $2 to $3 million. And Anne is said to have an inheritance of around $19 million from her late father. And again, he had just passed, and he was 58 when he passed. $3 million at that time, that was still a lot of money. That is equal to $70 million in today's monies. So you can imagine $19 million is crazy. It's a crazy amount of money. So even Charles, with his $3 million at that time, he is extremely wealthy man, extremely wealthy. So they're in the newspapers. They're discussing their wealth and how much they're worth. The police, as you can imagine what's going on, there are numerous leads to follow. There are phone calls. There are people that everyone's saying that they've seen the baby. They're calling in about their husbands, brothers, fathers have taken them. I mean, they are getting a lot of leads, some that are good, but a lot of things that are just absolutely wild. Now that there is a lead from a truck driver in Philadelphia, and he says that he saw a bundle on the side of the road that appeared to look like a baby bundle. Now they go and investigate it, and they don't find anything. And this, again, everyone is blocking off, you've got the New Jersey State Police that are kind of in charge, but you're kind of getting it close to Ocean Way. So you have just a complete lockdown of the state into Pennsylvania. They're looking around like all the waterways. They're just looking everywhere they can. Now, press-wise, again, Charles and Anne were extremely obviously famous, well-known. You had not only the press in America talking about this, you had the press in the world. And they had taken a trip to Shanghai. They had gone on a trip to the Orient. They have like the mayor there and the president's there, like sending their condolences and, all of the families, foreign families across, everywhere, France, London, like everyone is sending condolences and prayers, and this presses across the world and not just the nation. Charles is a pilot. And so there's also the whole aviation, world. So there are 500 pilots that offered their help to aid in the search. Again, when I say everybody's looking for baby Charlie, everybody's looking. They're looking at the borders. They're looking in the air. They're on foot. They're like, everybody is looking. Simultaneously, the newspapers, like I said, they're reporting on everything, but they're also reporting on current and past kidnapping cases. So I do have one as an example. Okay, so right at this same time, there is a child named James DeJute Jr. He is 11. His father is a wealthy contractor, it says. They live in Ohio, and he was taken from his home literally kind of the same time frame as baby Charlie. So again, not just are they reporting on this situation, but they're reporting on all kidnapping situations going on and just the epidemic of it, the problem. Then, like we've talked about already, they're talking about the politics of it and getting the laws changed and such because they want to stop this horrific situation. Like I said, this is so crazy to even discuss, but Al Capone, the famous, I should say infamous gangster, I have a whole episode on him and his connection to Hot Springs, Arkansas. Go listen. It's very fascinating, but I go into his whole history and such. Well, he is serving a federal sentence for tax evasion. So he is in prison, and he is talking to the press, and he is telling them that he wants to help, that if he wasn't in prison, he could definitely help the situation. But he even offers a $10,000 reward for any information regarding, baby Charlie's kidnappers. So he is offering to help. Now, at the same time, the New York City police commissioner, he assigns a man named Sergeant James Finn to be a liaison for New York police and to guard the Lindberghs and help in the search of all of the Hopewell area. Now, Sergeant Finn is very well known to the Lindberghs. He had actually guarded Colonel Lindbergh during his famous flight times. And so he knew him, he trusted him. So that's why he was put in that position. So a lot of law enforcement are being put to guard them. And I will say they're also guarding the Morrow home as well, just FYI. So by day 3, which is Thursday, they post the quote-unquote known facts of the abduction in the newspaper. And again, we'll talk about headliners, but it talks about how baby Charlie was tucked into his second floor nursery at Hopewell by 7 p.m. The 2 nursery windows were closed but unlocked, and the screen of one was unlatched because it was warped, so it was damaged. Now, the kidnapper entered through this window. At 10 p.m., when the nurse entered the nursery to awaken the baby for feeding, she found the child gone. Now, this was the first time the Lindberghs had remained at their Hopewell home longer than a weekend. Footprints outside the window indicated there was only one kidnapper, joined later by a woman. And yes, so this is put in the paper, and we'll talk about that. Now, he evidently was familiar with the routine of the household, knew when the baby was put to bed, when it was awakened and thought that Colonel Lindbergh would be away from home during the evening. Although newspapers had said Colonel Lindbergh was to attend a banquet in New York, he got his dates mixed and arrived home at 8:20 p.m. Now, the baby wears a size 2, one-piece, white balbriggan sleeping garment made by the Novelty Knitting Company. It has stitched feet, long sleeves, and there are 6 pearl buttons up the front and 3 larger buttons in the back. Now, known clues are also a ransom note left by the kidnapper. Its handwriting may identify the author. The ladder used to enter the nursery home. It is homemade but well constructed, evidently by an expert carpenter. Built in 3 sections, it was obviously designed to be carried in an automobile, so it was like broken down. Now, a chisel found beneath the window, footprints in red clay mud beneath the window. These show the kidnapper pulled heavy socks over his shoes to deaden his steps in the nursery. His trail is joined by the footprints of a woman about a quarter of a mile from the house. Both trails lead to the road 2 miles away. There were no footprints on the ladder or anywhere in the room. Now, as we know, that wasn't true because, again, they're just reporting what they know or what they're being told or what they can find out. But there were muddy prints left, obviously, you had mud below and mud came into the room. So that was just kind of going to happen, like a common sense type situation. So now on this day 3 as well, you have the headline, "Phone Trick May Save Baby." So this was discussing that, and this was coming from information from Anne's family. So they were talking to Anne's relatives, her sisters and whatnot. Now they're talking about how baby Charlie loved the telephone, and if he was in the room with the phone or if it rang or whatever, he would not stop until he had picked it up and was talking on it. He loved the phone. And so they were talking about this and how if baby Charlie is in a situation where there's a phone, he's definitely going to want to be on the phone, talk on the phone. He's going to be very vocal about that. And they also are discussing that Charlie does not like strangers, that he would cry and carry on when new people try to hold him, talk to him. It takes him a little bit to warm up. And in fact, he had been going to kind of a pre-kindergarten situation with one of Anne's sisters in Inglewood. And he was doing well, but he definitely had to warm up. And again, he's only 20 months old. Yes. Now, furthermore, they are outlining a time frame of the kidnapping, which is interesting. So they state the time frame, and it's showing that at 5:30 p.m. in Brooklyn, New York, on the same day as the abduction, a Sam Mandel, he has his car taken, hijacked. Okay, so his car is stolen, it's gone, and I guess they're thinking that his vehicle is used in this abduction. Now, his car is found at 11:30 p.m. in Hillside, New Jersey, which is 47 miles north of Hopewell, kind of to the northeast. So this is outlined as far as in chronological order of the night's events. They put this Sam Mandel's vehicle in as fact, quote unquote. Now, right away, the Lindbergh home is being used as headquarters. They're just obviously this is where the baby was taken from. They've set up camp there. Now, another thing posted that was interesting, the family does have a Scottish Terrier. Evidently, they had 2. There was one in particular, a Scottish Terrier, that typically, it said, quote unquote, the dog normally slept outside the baby's room, but there was nothing to indicate or alert the family that the kidnapper came in. So the dog did not alert that night. Okay, at the same time, and they're not sure if this is a crank call. Again, there's always all of these people calling in and saying things, but around 8 p.m. it says the telephone on the city desk of a Philadelphia newspaper rang and a man's voice announced, "You may say that the Lindbergh baby is being cared for by a trained nurse. That's all." And then the caller immediately hung up. They did attempt to get the telephone company to trace the call, but it was unsuccessful. Now, Friday, March 4th. This is day 4. By this time, there have been 2,000 letters and notes that have been mailed to the Lindberghs. Evidently, one postcard read, "Baby will die," and it looked like the other postcard that was already received, talking about how the baby was safe. So that was alarming. But they are getting, again, day 4, 2,000 letters. So much correspondence, so much scrutiny. Also being scrutinized are the servants. They are grilling Betty, Ollie, and Ollie's wife over and over and over again. And I believe they're also talking, and we'll get into this, will come up later, they are also grilling the help at the Morrow residence as well. Okay, so everyone connected to the family, all of the help, all of the servants, they're all being scrutinized. By day 5, the prosecutor and E.E. Marshall, so he is talking to the press about immunity being offered. So the press is stating that on behalf of the prosecutor and on behalf of the parents, please return the child safely. And there will be, you'll get, basically they're saying you're going to get the $50,000 and you're going to get immunity. Just all we want is the baby back safely. So this is printed in the paper. And of course they're just trying everything they can to get little Charlie back. On Sunday, day 6, there are 2 well-known, stated as underworld individuals, so I guess gangsters, criminals, whatever. They are stated, and this is in the newspaper, they are stated as personally noted by Lindbergh to be a correspondent with the kidnappers if the kidnappers wanted that. So basically they're thinking that the kidnappers are in the underworld. And so they're saying, okay, these 2 people. So it was a Salvatore Spitali and Irving Bitts. So these 2 men, evidently they were well known, well connected, but everyone knew that they were kind of in this underworld life. And so they're basically saying, hey, kidnappers, you can reach out to them. Like, they will be a go-between. They will take care of getting you this money. Now, this is on the 6th. Now, unknown to the newspaper. So the newspapers are going to, and as you can see, rightly so, they're going to fall out of knowing what's going on after this time frame, because a second ransom note that was actually postmarked the 4th from Brooklyn is received on this 6th day. This is March 6th. Now, this note states, "Dear sir, we have warned you," note, I think they meant not, "to make anything public. Also notify the police. Now you have to take consequences. Means we will have to hold the baby until everything is quiet." But they spelled it quite. We cannot make any appointment just now. We know very well what it means to us. Is it really necessary to make a world affair out of this? Or to get your baby back as soon as possible to settle those affair in a quick way will be better for both. Don't be afraid about the baby. Keeping care of us day and night. We also will feed him according to the diet. So they're acknowledging that they are reading the newspapers. We are interested to send him back in good health. And ransom was made it says for $50,000, but now we have to take another person to it and probably have to keep the baby for a longer time as we expected. So the amount will be $70,000, $20,000. Then they give a breakdown: $20,000 in 50 bills, $25,000 in 20 bills, $15,000 in 10 bills, and $10,000 in 5 bills. Don't mark any bills or take them from one serial number. We will form you later where to deliver the money, but we will note to do so until the police is out of the case, spelled case wrong, and the peppers are quiet, but they spell it like quite. The kidnapping we prepared in years, so we are prepared for everything. So yes, so you can clearly see like the way it's written, it definitely is corresponding with that first letter, and definitely I would say sounding like someone English is not their first language. They get this ransom note. They have it. The police have a conference. So the police are notified, but the press is now done. Like, the press will not be in on anything more. Okay, so the press will still be reporting, but they're going to be reporting from a non-knowledgeable situation. Okay, so they're not going to get an inside look at what's going on as far as anything to do with the kidnappers or correspondence. However, there's going to be correspondence utilized through the newspapers, but the press is going to be like getting glimpses of this, but they're not going to know like details. But they do have a police conference. They get the governor. They go to Trenton, New Jersey. They get all the prosecuting officials, the police officials, the government officials. So everybody gets together to kind of discuss how they're going to go from here. They have private investigators also that have been employed by, remember, Charles' best friend and attorney, the Colonel Henry Breckinridge. So he's kind of in charge or helping, I should say, Charles out. But everybody gets together. Now, again, press-wise, they are still reporting, of course. They are going to continue to report, but they don't know what's going on. So there's nothing new. They're just kind of spitting out what they know and different things. But this is still front page news. This is still all over the news, not just one article. Okay, a third ransom note arrives. Now, this third note does not give any new information at all. It's really, really very repetitive of note 2. Now, at this same time is when a Dr. John F. Condon from the Bronx, he's lived in the Bronx all his life in New York City. He is a retired school principal, and he comes in and offers, like it's put in the newspaper, that he is offering to act as a go-between, and he's even putting up his own money. So he just says, I offer all I can scrape together to a loving mother may again have her child, and Colonel Lindbergh may know that the American people are grateful for the honor bestowed upon them by his pluck and daring. So he puts himself out there. Now, so Dr. Condon receives the next correspondence, which is the kidnappers outlining how to correspond with him, because they're going to use the newspapers to do this. But they're talking about like getting the money together, and that they were fine with him being like the go-between. But they say, put these 3 words in the New York American. So he's telling them exactly where to put it. Money is ready. So this instruction was to Dr. Condon. Now, also instructed to Dr. Condon is to be at home every evening between 6 p.m. and 12 p.m. so that he can get correspondence. He's further outlining for Mr. Lindbergh not to talk to the police. The next correspondence comes on March 12th around 8:30. So a Joseph Perrone, who was a taxi cab driver, he receives a note with Dr. Condon's name on it, and he does not recognize that it's just an unidentified stranger. They just pass the note, and he gives it to Dr. Condon. Now, the note basically instructs the doctor to go to a location where he's going to find another note under a stone. So he gives him specific instructions to take a car, drive to the last subway station from Jerome Avenue. 100 feet from this last station is an empty Frankfurter stand with a big open porch. You will find a notice in center of the porch underneath a stone. Dr. Condon has this message, and he also receives an anonymous call. And this call is telling him to follow the instructions, to do what the note says, and that he's going to meet with a person that's going to go by the name John. So now Dr. Condon does have a bodyguard with him, but he doesn't actually take the bodyguard with him down to the cemetery. So he's kind of keeping him at bay because he told him that he would be alone. Now, when Dr. Condon meets with this man, he will say that the man has a handkerchief over his nose and mouth, and he is wearing like a brown top coat and a brown felt hat. So he has a hat on, he has a coat on, he has a handkerchief covering most of his face. It is dark and in a cemetery. So there's not a lot that he gets from him as far as distinctive description, but he does state that this man speaks with a distinct German accent, appears to be about 5'9", 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighing in around 165 pounds, athletic type build. Like that's pretty much all he knows. The man is very cautious, very fearful of being caught, but they do meet. And in this conversation, Dr. Condon is letting him know, I didn't bring the money. We're not going to hand over the money until you give over the child. Well, the John says that they're not going to give up the child until they have the money, but they will give something. In fact, he says specifically, they will send them the child's sleeping outfit to them to be like evidence of the child. So that's what they agree on the 12th when they meet. Now, after they meet on the 12th, Dr. Condon, he is corresponding with the kidnappers, as instructed through the newspaper. This next correspondence, he puts like a code name, Jafsie. So basically this Jafsie, and he spells it Jafsie, is just a pseudonym taking his own like initials, like his JFC for his name, Jafsie. So that's how he comes up with that. But basically the next correspondence he puts in the newspaper is, money is ready, no cops, no Secret Service, no press. I come alone like last time. Now, on March 16th, the 7th ransom note comes in to Dr. Condon along with the baby's sleeping suit. Now, immediately upon getting the sleeping suit, they take it to Charles, and he identifies that, yes, this is the sleeping suit that my son was wearing the night that he was kidnapped. So it is for sure the sleeping suit. Now, again, this happens on the 16th. Now, after this, they have the sleeping suit. This is March 16th. Over the next few days, Dr. Condon is corresponding via the newspaper. One of his correspondents says, I accept, money is ready. John, your package is delivered and is okay. Direct me, Jafsie. And then he has another one. Inform me how I can get important letter to you. Urgent, Jafsie. Now, after this, on March 21st, an 8th ransom note is sent to Dr. Condon. And in this, the kidnapper discusses how, and I don't really understand the point of it, but basically it's almost like they're stalling. They're just discussing why should Mrs. and Mr. Lindbergh suffer longer as necessary, as will not communicate with you or Mr. Lindbergh until you write so in the paper. So it's kind of double talk about the going back and forth. It does say this kidnapping case was prepared for a year already, so the police won't have any luck to find us or the child. You only put everything farther out. Did you send that little package to Mr. Lindbergh? It contains the sleeping suit for the baby. The baby as well. Mr. Lindbergh only wasting time with his search. So that's all it really says. It doesn't say any more report, about exchanging, getting the money. The whole point was to get the sleeping suit to confirm, and then Jafsie's trying to set up the time to drop the money. So anyway, it's just kind of like a stall. It's just weird. Dr. Condon goes back, publishes, thanks, that little package you sent me was immediately delivered and accepted as real article. See my position, over 50 years in business, and can I pay without seeing the goods? ? Common sense makes me trust you. Please understand my position, Jafsie. And then another correspondence from Jafsie says, money is ready. Furnish simple code for us to use in paper. Jafsie. Now the kidnappers come over with another correspondence saying that they're basically going to keep the baby in place until they have the money in hand. Then they state if the deal is not closed until 8th of April, they're going to ask for $30,000 more. So making the $70,000 now $100,000. And then he's just talking about how Mr. Lindbergh is fooling around for a month with this and kind of going back and forth. And then they close out with, there is absolute no fear about the child. It is well. So the kidnapper sends a 10th note stating to Dr. Condon, be ready by Saturday evening. So this note is sent on April 1st. So it's sent on a Friday, April 1st, so saying the next day. And then it says, put in paper, yes, everything okay. It is very simple delivery, but if we find out this is a trap, they're saying 8 hours after, you'll get the address from the boy on the place where you can find two ladies. They are innocent. If it is too late, they're saying put it in the New York American for Saturday morning. So they're saying to send the correspondence. So Jafsey does. He says, yes, everything okay, Jafsey. So there is an 11th note sent that says, take a car and follow Tremont Avenue to the east until you reach the number 3225 Tremont Avenue. It is a nursery. Bergen Greenhouse's florist. There is a table standing outside right on the door. You find a letter underneath the table covered with a stone. Read and follow instructions. Don't speak to anyone on the way. If there is a radio alarm for police car, we warn you. We have the same equipment. Have the money in one bundle. We give you 3/4 of an hour to reach the place. This instruction is sent on Saturday. Okay, now on that Saturday, Dr. Condon is with Charles. He's with Colonel Breckenridge, and he's with his bodyguard, who is like a former boxer, a Mr. Reich. Now, they are all at Dr. Condon's home, because, of course, Dr. Condon on the 1st alerted everybody what was happening for the 2nd, that he was waiting for the message and the instructions. They are all together. They receive the instructions that I had read to you guys, and so Charles is the one that has the money together. And like I said, I don't even know if Dr. Condon understands like what they did with the money to kind of at least have some way to track down the kidnappers who utilize it. But basically, Charles has the money. Charles actually drives the Mr. Reich's car with Dr. Condon to the appointed place. So they drive to this florist, and then Dr. Condon gets out. He gets the other note, which instructs him to cross the street and walk to the next corner and follow Whittemore Avenue to the south. Take the money with you. Come alone and walk. I will meet you. Now, Dr. Condon, he walks over to the cemetery, and Charles is like, obviously Charles is not waiting behind, but he can actually hear, like he's close enough to hear like a voice call out, hey, doctor. So a voice calls out for the doctor. The doctor walks towards the voice, and then he is outside of the eyesight of Charles, so he does meet with this John, and this location is another cemetery called St. Raymond's. Okay, it's in the Bronx. It's another cemetery. They had already met at the cemetery on March 12th. Charles had given the doctor a wooden box, which was like 12 to 14 inches long, 7 to 9 inches high. The box was like literally crammed with the money, and the doctor had said just to put 50,000 in the box, not the full 70,000. So Charles had the extra 20,000 with him, but in this box, all of this money was just crammed in there, and it was in the denominations that the kidnappers had wanted. Now, they make this exchange, and the kidnappers like, here is a note containing the whereabouts of baby Charles. The note states the boy is on the boat Nellie. Now, he spells boat B-O-A-D. By the way, it is a small boat, 28 feet long. 2 persons are on the boat. They are innocent. You will find the boat between Horseneck Beach and Gay Head near Elizabeth Island. So this is literally, by the way, the last correspondence from the kidnappers. So they part ways. Dr. Condon goes back, gets in the car with Charles, and Charles immediately goes to Bridgeport, Connecticut to get on a plane to fly to this area. Now with him is his friend Colonel Breckenridge, and also that Mr. Irie. Remember the IRS chief that has helped him this whole time with like the money and such. Dr. Condon is with him as well. Now they get into a plane, and they go and they spend several hours looking for the boat detailed in the note, and they find nothing. And this is heartbreaking. So over the next day or two, Charles is continuing to fly everywhere looking for his son. Like he's looking for this boat, he's looking, and just nothing happens. Like the baby, the boat, none of it is the way that the kidnapper said. like none of it. And you can just imagine the frustration, the disappointment, the anger. Like, I can't even imagine this. Just absolute nonsense. Kind of a little back note. This was kind of something, all of this was going on back and forth, over that whole period of March into April. But something else had happened on March 29th. Now, on March 29th, Betty Gow, she's still at the Lindbergh's home. She is the Lindbergh's nurse. She finds the infant's thumb guard. Now, this thumb guard is basically like a guard that, just like it sounds, that babies would put on their thumb to keep them from sucking their thumb at night when they're sleeping. Baby Charles had this thumb guard. She knew that it was his thumb guard, the one that he was wearing at the time of the kidnapping. Now, this thumb guard is found pretty much crushed up and crunched, and she finds it near the entrance of the estate. Just kind of a side note there. So she does find this thumb guard, and it was literally, could have been there this whole time, but it was like crushed into the ground, so to speak. As you can imagine, it's really feeling like they're just back at the beginning, like so frustrated. But the Department of Justice, the Coast Guard, the immigration officers with the U.S., plus you still have the New Jersey State Police, you have the New York Police, you have everybody still looking. And now they're really looking at all of the coastlines, all the boats, anything fitting within the description of what the kidnappers had given to them as their last correspondence. Also, Dr. Condon, he gives a description. So when he meets with the John again, this time there's not like a handkerchief over his face. And in fact, when he first met with him, he didn't take the money right away. So when he says, "Hey, doctor," they kind of meet up, and I don't understand, but Dr. Condon is like, "Hey, how about you just take 50,000? It's in the car with Colonel Lindbergh." So he does say that Colonel Lindbergh's in the car. Now he goes back to the car and then brings back the actual cash box described with the 50,000. Now, Dr. Condon, he actually sees John this time, like fully. So he gives the description of John as a Scandinavian man, approximately 30 years old. He keeps with the 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighing around 158 to 165. He has bluish gray eyes, dirty blonde hair, medium complexion, and an oval-shaped face. Condon notes that, again, the man was very nervous, has a German accent. He is coughing frequently as well. He also notes the man is wearing a dark brown felt hat with a snap brim, a black or dark coat, and pepper and salt trousers. This description won't be put out in the papers that I can see right away. I think they were trying to keep certain elements like to themselves. And of course, they're still working to get the baby back. And there are several other people that are trying to do a go-between, just like Dr. Condon was. And I will say Dr. Condon is very looked at himself. Now, Colonel Lindbergh, him and his wife, and the Colonel Breckinridge, they all just talk about how upstanding Dr. Condon was during this period. So even though it kind of felt to the police, okay, why were you involved? What? I mean, he was being scrutinized, but then he was also being vetted through the whole process, and he was being very looked at. And again, Charles had a lot of friends helping him out with this whole thing, the IRS, the Ivy. He had a lot of people helping him. Something that is put out right away after this is about the notes. In fact, the U.S. Treasury puts out a notice to all of the banks to be looking for these serial numbers, be looking for these gold certificates of the $10 notes specifically. So there are a few notes within the next couple weeks. There are a few notes that do come through to banks. Now, nothing comes of it. There was actually, in one situation, a note was looked at through, and because I will say that U.S. Treasury notice is put in the actual newspaper. So now the kidnappers know that these particular notes, their serial numbers, that they were written down. So that is another, and this comes out in the paper by mid-April. Okay, so you've got that going on. So I don't know if that was a good thing or not, probably not, but some notes are appearing. The baby is still missing. The Lindberghs are beside themselves. They're hoping beyond hope that the baby is okay, that someone will come forward, that the kidnappers will actually send more word, but nothing more is happening. Their world is about to be absolutely shattered when word comes to the Lindberghs that their baby boy, Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr., has been found. He has been located, but he is not alive. We're going to get into all of this. On Thursday, May 12, 1932, a truck driver named William Allen, he pulls over to the side of the road, which is about 4 miles from where the Lindbergh home is located. Now, his intent in pulling over was to relieve himself in the trees next to the road, like he had to use the bathroom. Now, here, he discovers the decaying corpse of a young child, and he immediately alerts the police. The body of this child is found face down and has been severely damaged by animal activity. Now, part of the left leg and hand of the child is missing, and the body itself is so badly decomposed that it was not possible to identify the body initially, whether the victim was male, female, like nothing could be identified in that way. It was that decomposed. The body is transported to a morgue in Trenton, New Jersey. So the state police automatically, they have this decomposed body and they've transported it, and they immediately, it's only 4 miles from the Lindbergh's home. So they immediately alert the Lindberghs to what's going on because they need to get some type of identification of the body. Now, the Lindberghs were alerted, but it looks like they cannot make it to Trenton to actually fully identify the baby until the following day. However, the baby's autopsy is performed on that same day. So at that point of the autopsy, the baby is quote unquote unknown. Now, the county physician who was going to carry out the autopsy, his name is Dr. Charles H. Mitchell, but he has severe arthritis, so the actual dissections were going to be made by the county coroner, which was a funeral home director, Walter Swazi. Now, they had called in the baby's doctor just to be there, and again, so the parents they weren't there yet. So from everything that I can see, this baby is not officially identified. However, everyone's then put on notation. The baby's pediatrician, which is a Dr. Philip Van Ingen, he is actually there. And it says that he's quote unquote not too thrilled that Mitchell himself wasn't making the cuts, but that the mortician Swazi was. But Dr. Ingen was there for the actual autopsy. This is the notations of Walter himself, and these were made on that same day. We're talking May 12th. Now, this would have been that evening. I believe the body was found in the afternoon. Now, it says, report on unknown baby. Sex, undetermined due to marked decomposition of body. General appearance, badly decomposed. Left leg from knee down, missing. Left hand, missing. Right forearm, missing. Abdominal organs, except liver, missing. Thoracic organs, except heart, missing. Eye softened and decomposed. Skin of head, face portion of chest and right foot discolored and decomposed. Body shows evidence of prolonged exposure and usual decomposition that would occur the course of approximately 2 to 3 months time, depending on climatic and other conditions that might produce such results. Special characteristics: unusually high and prominent forehead and a cranium apparently greater in circumference than would be found in a child this age. The first toe of the right foot completely overlaps the large toe, and the second toe of the right foot partially overlaps the large toe. There are 8 upper and 8 lower teeth. The upper incisors are well formed, rather prominent, but do not protrude. The 2 lower canines tend to divert towards and are below the line of the adjacent teeth. Height 33 and 1 inches, light curly hair about 3 inches in length, and a section skin on the right foot which had not become discolored indicated a child of the white race. The facial muscles, the only ones of the body that had not deteriorated, would indicate a well-developed child. Autopsy findings are general decomposition of the muscle of the entire body and other soft tissues except the face, but marked discoloration and some disfigurement of this part of the body existed due to softening of the eyeballs and a swollen condition of the lips and tongue. There was also a fracture of the skull extending from the fontanelle down the left side of the skull to a point posterior to the left ear, where it bifurcated into 2 distinct fractures. There was also a perforated fracture about 1/2 inch in diameter on the right side of the skull, posterior to the right ear. There was evidence of a hemorrhage on the inner surface of the left side of the skull. At the point of fracture, the skull was so badly decomposed that it was impossible to find any contusions or hemorrhage external to the skull. The fontanelle was not closed, the opening in the skull at this point being about 1 inch in diameter. Diagnosis of the cause of death is a fractured skull due to external violence. Now, this was written up by the Walter H. Swayze, again in Trenton, New Jersey. This was written up that same day, May 12, 1932. Now, this is absolutely horrific, very obvious to the family that the child was harmed right away, whether the child was dropped or purposefully murdered that same night. There's who knows what happened to the baby. But Charlie was killed that same day, like we discussed. On May 12th, the baby wasn't legally identified, although his pediatrician, Dr. Philip von Ingen, was present for his autopsy, and he had verified the identity of the child, but you still had the parents and had Betty, and Betty the nurse. So they were going to do this the very next day. It was Friday, May 13th, whenever Charles and Ann and Betty could actually get to Trenton and get to where baby Charlie's body was. So they, along with Dr. Philip von Ingen, they are able to identify their child. Of course, we know that the sleeper that the baby was wearing, wasn't on him, but the baby still had underclothes. So those were verified. Of course, Dr. Van Ingen had known the baby his whole life, had seen the baby when he was sick, right before he went missing. There was a flannel shirt found with baby Charlie's body that Betty Gow herself could verify was definitely the baby's, because she had made the shirt herself. So there was multiple ways there that they verified that this was the body of baby Charlie. The baby is murdered. Their worst fear, of course, they've been holding out hope that their baby would be found alive, and now there is absolutely no hope. Now, on top of this, at this point, Charles had been communicating with the police. The police had pretty much let Charles, because of who he was and because of him being famous and because it was so well connected, they had pretty much let him have a lot of say as far as like all the kidnapping stuff. That wouldn't go on today, of course, but they did let Charles have a lot of say. And Charles was able to tell the police, okay, I just want my baby back. I don't want you all to pursue this kidnapper and scare him and whatever, because the object was to get Charlie back. Well, now that they knew that Charlie had been murdered, this kidnapper is now a murderer. And now all bets are off. It is just, we need to find this baby killer. So at this point, and then for the family, of course, they're absolutely devastated. And again, Anne is pregnant. She will have her other child, which will be a boy named John. Like, she will give birth in August. So that will happen for the family. But the family, they do cremate baby Charlie. They do have a private ceremony, just like when they got married. Everything was very private. It was handled in Inglewood, at her home in Inglewood, New Jersey, with her family. So there was no fanfare as far as any type of public funeral or anything like that. So this was two parents grieving and just trying to figure out the next steps. And of course, as far as the police are concerned, there was very little evidence that they could go on to begin with. But what they do have is they have the currency out there. So that's something that is being very looked at. All of those bills that were paid to the kidnapper, that's what they do have. But in the meantime, all of the police agencies, you have the FBI, you have the Department of Justice, everyone is on the lookout for this killer. There's so much going on now that the baby is officially gone. On the flip side, we're going to go back a little ways, because there were a lot of things going on as far as, we covered the back and forth between Dr. Condon and the kidnapper. Well, also in March, so after this happened, there were a lot of people that were trying to be helpful. Okay, there were a lot of rich people, by the way, that were trying to be helpful. They really wanted to help the Lindberghs and do the right, they just wanted to be helpful. And they're kind of going rogue. Okay, you've got a lot of people going rogue. Well, there is a situation in March. Wealthy socialite named Evelyn Walsh McLean. Okay, so she is desperate to help out the Lindberghs. Now, a man named Gaston B. Means, he is a con man, and he evidently connects with Evelyn McLean and defrauds her of $100,000, claiming that he knows who kidnapped the baby and that he's going to get the baby back. So she puts up the money, thinking that he's going to be the go-between with these kidnappers. So he takes the money. Of course, he doesn't have a clue. He's not connected to the situation. There's nothing going on. So he's just in this for money. Eventually, Means will get in trouble and he will be imprisoned for embezzlement and fraud. Eventually, it takes many years to kind of chase this all down and iron this out and see exactly what happened. But yes, eventually he gets in trouble. So that was kind of like a little side note going on in March. Okay, so you had Charles working with the kidnappers, with Dr. Condon, and then you had this other stuff going on. Now, likewise, what we had talked about was everybody connected to the Lindberghs were being scrutinized. In fact, after all this happened, Dr. Condon, he scrutinized, but of course they talked to the three servants that were working in the Lindbergh household, but they were also talking to like servants in the Morrow household. So there was one particular young woman. She's a 28-year-old, a British immigrant working in the Morrow home as like a maid. Okay, so her name is Violet Sharp. For whatever reason, don't even know, but she doesn't give consistent answers as to her whereabouts on March 1st, like when she's questioned by the police. So she is repeatedly questioned by the police because they're like, okay, you're giving us unsatisfactory answers. You're not giving us anything that we can really work with here. Okay, so they tell her that they want to see her again. Basically, another interview is set up. This was in June. Okay, they're still dealing with this. They're going back and forth. Well, June 10th of 1932, Violet Sharp, before she can meet with the police, and this would have probably been the fourth interview with them, she is found to have committed suicide by swallowing cyanide capsules. She does this. The police, again, they're looking very closely, but they had actually been able to narrow down her movements on March 1st to kind of clear her. Like everything had checked out when they talked to other individuals that had seen her and knew of her whereabouts on March 1st. So they figured out, okay, it can't be you. So this is kind of one of those weird moments in this case, kind of a side note. So obviously Violet was dealing with some sorts of trouble, but the police were able to rule her out, although her suicide definitely was suspicious and looked very suspicious at the time and even now. So for some individuals. Now, this goes on in June. You have the Lindberghs, they're doing the best they can. They're trying to help the police as best they can. And I will say, they never return to live in their home outside of Hopewell. They will remain, and as you can imagine, they are highly guarded. The whole Morrow household is highly guarded. Everybody's still on high alert. And of course, Anne is pregnant. So their baby comes in August, and again, his name is John. They have a boy. So they are keeping to the family compounds, whether it's in Englewood, New Jersey, or in Maine. So they are laying low. They are being guarded. They are being watched carefully. And of course, everybody's working on their file. The FBI had met immediately. They were working, especially once the baby was found deceased. Like, everything's kicked into high gear to just try to figure out who did this. But the Lindberghs are never going to live in their home again. In September of 1933, now we have Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He is the president. So he is meeting with the director of the FBI. You've got Hoover. He's meeting with the Department of Justice. He's talking to the Attorney General, who is a man named Cummings. Like, he is talking to everybody. He's talking to the IRS, and he's trying to detail, and he's also saying, okay, FBI, you are kind of over this operation, but everybody needs to work closely and get this figured out and find out who, we know we have these notes out here. This is how we're going to catch him, the killer. By April of 1933, President Roosevelt, he issues an executive order which required Americans to redeem and replace all gold certificate currency on or before May 1st, 1933. That's like less than a month. So during this month, the kidnappers do succeed in converting around $15,000 of the ransom. So these notes come through, okay? They come into the banks and then they go into the treasury. This is a huge volume of currency in just like a short time. So the bankers could not recall who, what, where, as far as this currency was coming in. So it was difficult for them to actually track down the individuals themselves that had brought in this money, okay? However, you have, and now he's a lieutenant, James Finn. So remember, he was Sergeant Finn. He had actually worked with Charles whenever he did his flight in 1927. And then also the police commissioner of New York City had put Sergeant Finn kind of as a liaison between the New York City police and the Lindberghs, like to protect them, to help in the situation, like everything. So Finn is very connected to the family. He has a personal love, respect, just connection. So he is fervently working these bills. Now, he had already 600 leads generated on a total of 716 bills. And so he was pretty much tracking these bills. He was notating them on a map. Okay, so he was looking at this map. And again, he's very devoted. So he's got this map, which is notating the location, discovery, like all of the information about these bills that have been found. And what Finn is recognizing is that a lot of these transactions are in and around the city, New York City. Now, there's no definitive pattern or anything like that, but he was just keeping up with this, and this is just his showing his diligence. Now, by September 18th of 1934, a banker is a branch manager for the Corn Exchange Bank. He discovers a deposit of a $10 gold certificate, which matches the serial number list provided from the Lindbergh kidnapping. Now, this banker immediately contacts the authorities. Now, Lieutenant Finn, he shows up to carefully inspect the bill, and his eyes are just amazed. Like, he's looking at this bill and he is absolutely shocked, amazed, thrilled, because he notices handwritten on the back of this bill is 4U-13-41. Okay? He immediately recognizes this as numbers and dashes that relate to license plate numbers for vehicles registered in the state of New York. So basically, whoever this person was, he doesn't know it at this point, basically wrote on the bill the license plate number. So he's thrilled. Finn is like, yes. So the first thing he does is they are tracking down with the bank, like, who's making these deposits. And actually there were like 3 different gas stations that were making these deposits, like, on this day that this bill came in. Now, the first stop is with a gas station manager named Walter Lyle. And Walter just happens to, and this is the first stop out of 3, he happens to be the person to make that notation. And what he recalls, and he tells Finn, is, so there's an immigrant, he says, an immigrant stopped in, he purchased $1 worth of gasoline, and he paid with this $10 gold certificate. Now, Lyle, he knew that these gold certificates were unusual, and he knew this because of the president's executive order that came out, okay? So he was like, and you don't see many of these anymore, he notated. He literally tells this customer, he's like, oh, you don't see many of these anymore. And this guy says, oh, yes, you do. I've got 100 of them left at home. So he's saying that to this. Well, Lyle kind of suspects the bill, so he doesn't think that this is necessarily the kidnapper or anything, but he thinks that the bill is counterfeit. So just in case, he's like, okay, I'm going to jot down this customer's license plate number, because he just felt uneasy about the whole situation. So smart. Finn, of course, he's remembering things about this. He's like remembering that Dr. Condon, whenever he had delivered the money, the ransom money, stated that this person was, speaking with a German accent. So this is kind of lining up with, okay, an immigrant from Europe is what Lyle had said. Now, so Finn's like, okay, this is good. So immediately, Finn tracks down the license plate application and compares the handwriting to the ransom notes. And he is seeing that it's pretty much matching to him, okay? And the handwriting is coming from a man, and he is a German immigrant, and his name is Bruno Richard Hauptmann. So now he has a name, now he has an address. So immediately, they put this address under surveillance. So they go there right away. So all of this is happening just really quickly on September 18th of 1934. That night, Finn and other authorities, federal and state authorities, they are surveilling this address. And the next morning at 9 a.m., September 19th, 1934, an individual comes about matching the description of the John person that looked exactly like the person that Dr. Condon had met. And this is also matching the description of the person that Lyle had met when he purchased gas. So Bruno Richard Hauptmann is arrested on September 19th, 1934. And this is where I'm going to leave you guys. So sorry. I really wanted this to be just a part 2, but there is still so much more information. So in part 3, we are going to talk about who is Bruno Richard Hauptmann. We are going to get into who he is, the evidence against him, his trial, his execution, and then we're going to get into what happened with the Lindberghs between the time of 1934 to Charles Lindbergh's death in the 1970s, and then Anne's death in 2001. So there's still a lot of interesting information here to cover. So that will be part 3. But thank you guys so much for listening. Sad, horrible situation, but just absolutely fascinating. And just the big question is, did Hopman do it? So we will get into all of the evidence in part 3. So stay tuned. Again, follow me on all the social medias, and thank you guys for listening. Bye.